year 2005 marks the centenary of St Malachy's GAC Castlewellan, and this DVD presentation is an attempt to chart the rich history of the club over the past 100 years. Throughout the years, the club has grown in size and significance, and now can be rightly referred to as one of the leading clubs not only in Down but throughout the rest of Ireland. The club has successfully evolved from simple beginnings when a group of local lads got together under the guidance of the town's schoolmaster, Martin Cafferty. Looking back now at the start of the 21st century, the club has 18 teams competing at all age groups of men and women, catering for both hurling and football. Castlewellan is proud to be part of the Gaelic Athletic Association, promoting the games of hurling, football, handball, rounders and camogie. The association supports activities which enrich the culture and further Gaelic ideals in the Irish language and Irish music and dance. The Gaelic Athletic Association endeavours to strengthen pride in the communities it serves. Castlewellan is located in the ancient parish of Kilmagan, which comprises a total of 17 townlands. The boundary lines between parishes in Ireland are well known and sometimes keenly debated. The Kilmagan parish boundary is no different, with a player's choice of club often being determined at birth. Before the 17th century, the McGuinness dynasty ruled virtually all of South Down, from the Mourne Mountains through to Newry. At the beginning of the 17th century, Castlewellan was one of the principal strongholds of the McGuinness. Under the English King James I, the McGuinness land was seized by the English crown, but later Phelim McGuinness was granted 11 townlands in the parishes of Kilmagan and Kilcoo, constituting the manor of Castlewellan. In the turbulent years that followed, the family were constantly on the Irish side during the resistance to English aggression in the 17th century, and after the Battle of the Boyne, they were dispossessed of their patrimony on the County Down, including Castlewellan. Francis Annesley MP of Thorngamby, Yorkshire and Castlewellan, County Down, became one of 13 English trustees who benefited from the forfeiture of Irish estates by an English Act of Resumption passed in 1700. His descendant, also Francis Annesley, acquired the property at Castlewellan in 1741, and from that date onwards began to shape the estate as it is today. When the Ansleys acquired Castlewellan in 1741, they proceeded to build a 6-foot wall around the estate. The town of Castlewellan was laid out in two parts, in the style of a French town. The old town, now Upper Square, facing the entrance to the Annesley domains, now Castlewellan Forest Park, was built in the shape of a crescent in the 1750s. The new town, Lower Square, was developed from 1810 onwards as the town grew in importance as a trading and market centre. A thoroughfare, Main Street, joined both squares. Father John McWilliams, in November 1876, succeeded Father James McAleen as parish priest on the condition that he built a new church in Castlewellan. Construction work on the old church in Castlewellan had commenced in 1825, and it was dedicated in 1827, and by now had become too small, only accommodating 200 to 300 persons. The site of the old church, which is still the current site, was obtained by Alexander McMullen from Lord Annesley for a loan which Annesley needed very badly. The present St Malachy's church was built with direct labour, with Mr John McAleen Nansper as foreman, and he had charge of the men and materials, and Father McWilliams paid all engaged in the work at the end of each week. The first payment of wages to the men was made on the 7th of May 1880, and on the 7th of September 1884 the church was solemnly dedicated by the Bishop, Most Reverend Dr Dorian, and the sermon on the occasion being preached by Father Flood O.P. Newry. In 1920, the new parish priest, Father Eardley, had the vision to secure a lease of the old meadow from the Annesley estate for a nominal sum to provide sporting and recreation facilities for parishioners. With this ground later being purchased outright by the parish, and in 1975 the meadow was finally leased to St Malachy's GAC, and after huge development work, the old meadow was completely transformed into one of the best playing pitches in the county and officially opened as Park and Amalgam in 1978. John Henry King was born in Castlewellan in 1876, the son of Matthew King, a leading businessman and justice of the peace in the town. From his earliest years, he was identified with the Gaelic revival and the Irish Ireland movement following the formation of the Gaelic League in 1893. At the end of the 19th century, a new schoolteacher arrived in the town, a man who would have a major influence on the future development of Gaelic games and culture in the area. That man was Martin Cathaway. Martin Cathaway was born and raised in a place called Ballyhadrain in County Mayo. He was an enthusiast for everything Irish. He also was a founder member of Fishindoon in 1902, becoming its first secretary, a position he held until 1944 and remained its main inspiration during this period. Although more concerned with the language and history, he recognised the importance of Gaelic games, and until he retired from teaching in 1939, always had a Gaelic team in St. Primary School. A photograph of Martin Cathaway's 1903 schoolboy hurling team, known as Castlewellan Red Hands, shows the red hands on their shirts and the players displaying the old-fashioned hurling sticks. Martin Cathaway, who is largely credited as the one responsible for the introduction of Gaelic games to Castlewellan, died in May 1948. As a result of the work being done at schools level by Martin Cathaway, the next step for the area was the formation of an adult team to continue the development work. The 1905 convention of the Down County Board was held at St. Primary School, Castlewellan, on Sunday the 19th of March, with Castlewellan represented by James McCartan and Thomas Smith. It was on that historic occasion, on the 19th of March 1905, that the Castlewellan Club were officially affiliated to the Gaelic Athletic Association for the very first time. The county chairman on that occasion was none other than Castlewellan-born John Henry King, who welcomed the newly formed Castlewellan Club and complimented the members on the spirit that prompted them to join the ranks of the GAA. The first official fixture for the newly formed club was in the Down Senior Hurling Championship at home to the county champions Falconballa Newry, with teams at this time consisting of 17 players a side, and after tremendous effort, having led at half-time, were eventually beaten on this first occasion 114 to 17. Playing on this first team was a young Hugh McAleen in Newcastle Road, who himself would later serve as county secretary and county treasurer, and the family tradition continued with his son Patrick winning senior championship medals in the 1950s, and his grandson John McAleen repeating the same feat in the late 1970s and early 1980s, all with the town. For the next 5 years, the club teams continued to play under the name of Castlewellan Red Hands, and then in 1910, with an increasing number of players, the team names used were Senior Football Castlewellan Hearts, Junior Football Castlewellan O'Rahilly's, and Senior Hurling Castlewellan Red Hands. And it was the O'Rahilly's who brought the first county championship success to the club when they captured the Down Junior Football Championship title in 1920. Playing on this team was Joe Toner, the famous Arsenal and Ireland soccer player, whose grandson Frankie would keep the family tradition alive when he won senior championship medals with the town in the 1980s and 1990s. By 1922, because of the political scene at the time, very few games were being played, and it almost led to the collapse of the organisation in Down. However, with the revival the following year, the team name was changed to the Castlewellan Diamonds, and it proved to be a shrewd move, because this team captured the club's first Down Senior Football Championship title in 1924, when they beat Mayorbridge in the final 1-2 to 0-2. Playing on that team was Willie Ferguson, who would add to his collection 10 years later in 1934, and whose son became that famous Dublin footballer and hurler of the 1950s and 60s, Des Snitchy Ferguson. Pat Down was also a member of that successful team, and the club presented him with his GAA Centenary Medal in 1984 as the last surviving member of this historic team 60 years previous. Jerry O'Donoghue was a young man when he came to Castlewellan as a national teacher from Kenmure in County Kerry in the early 1920s and took up a teaching appointment in Clonbarracan, and when he got married set up home on Newcastle Road, Castlewellan. He was a fine sportsman and went on to represent Down in both football and hurling, with hurling perhaps his favourite love, even though he was also a fine exponent of handball. As an administrator, he served as Down County Chairman for 2 separate terms, and during his first term he continued to represent the county on the field of play as well. The family tradition was continued by his son Paddy, who won a Senior League medal with the town in 1955, as well as helping to pioneer numerous underage successes for Castlewellan. He also went on to hold the highest office in Down as Down County Chairman on 2 separate occasions in the late 1960s and the early 1970s.
I would like to introduce Frank Lennon, one of our oldest surviving past players, who would share with us some of his fondest memories of the last 75 years.
My recollection of handball, although I wasn't a handball player, was in Father Cullen's time in the mid-1920s. Father Cullen was an enthusiastic handballer, and he was associated with a club in Belfast. And the club in Belfast decided to challenge the Castlewellan group. And the Castlewellan selected the first 2 players was Owen McCabe and a man called Charlie Poland, 2 experts. And their only interest was handball. So the Belfast boys came out in their togs and their badges and all of their club, and the 2 other boys, McCabe and Poland, came out. And there was a big patch on McCabe's ass of his trousers, you know. Somebody said he had an overcoat on, but he didn't have. But there was quite an audience there, and they're very appreciative of the game, which Poland and McCabe won easily because they were both expert handballers. And after that, the handballs deteriorated to an awful extent. There wasn't interest in it, and the football came on. And 1929, Father Cullen was transferred somewhere else, and Father McAleigh came along. Father McAleigh was from the Ards Peninsula, and he took over, and his interest was the football. And after been here a year or so, a couple of years, his ambition was to have an entirely parish team. And we had a team in Auckland Finn at the time. So they approached us to see if we'd amalgamate with Castlewellan. And we were very reluctant to do so, for we were going well, but on the assurance that all players, senior and junior, would be involved, we decided to accept and that was the parish team formed in about 1932. And after a couple of years, I went on to win the All-Ireland, All-County League and Championship, which we're very proud of. So we went on then to win the league and the championship on 2 occasions. The strongest opposition we had was Kilcoo. I think Kilcoo were one of the only teams that beat us that year. And Saul, we had a draw with Saul, which was only very low in the league. They weren't a great team, but were